I had been driving for hours on a road that felt like it was unraveling into nowhere. The asphalt was broken, weeds clawing up from its cracks, and the silence was unsettling, as if the world itself had forgotten this place. Then, out of nowhere, a faded wooden sign appeared on the side of the road, its paint peeling and its letters nearly erased by time. It read, "Welcome to Greywick." Something about the name pulled at me, though I couldn't explain why. Curiosity, or maybe something deeper, urged me to turn the wheel and take the road into the heart of this forgotten town. I should have kept driving, but I didn't. The first thing that struck me was the silence. It wasn't just quiet, was absolute. No rustling leaves, no chirping birds, not even the distant echo of life. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums until you start to hear your own heartbeat. The second thing I noticed were the clocks. Everywhere I looked, on shop walls, in windows, above door frames, even on a tower looming over the square reach, and every clock had stopped. All of them, different shapes and sizes, frozen at the exact same moment. 3:17. That detail sent a chill down my spine, though I couldn't yet explain why. But the deeper I walked into Greywick, the more wrong it all began to feel, as if the town itself was watching me. The buildings looked abandoned, yet strangely alive. Shops stood open with plates still sitting on tables, meals long decayed into piles of dust. A chair in the old diner lay tipped on its side, as though someone had jumped up in a rush. Curtains in houses shifted, though no breeze touched them. It was as though the people had vanished in a single instant, leaving behind a snapshot of their last moments. And everywhere I turned, those clocks glared down at me, 3:17, over and over again. Time itself had been swallowed whole, and I had walked right into the belly of it. Drawn by some invisible pull, I wandered into an old bookstore. The bell above the door let out a hollow chime, the sound too loud in the suffocating quiet. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in the weak sunlight that slipped through cracked windows. Books filled the shelves, but many were scattered across the floor, pages torn and smeared with what looked like soot. I knelt to pick one up, but before I could, a sound froze me in place. Tick, tick, my breath caught. None of the clocks were working, so where was the sound coming from? My eyes landed on the counter, where a single pocket watch lay open. Unlike everything else in this town, its hands were moving. But what chilled me to the bone wasn't that it was working, it was that it showed 3:16. I reached for it, compelled by something I didn't understand. The moment my fingers touched the cold metal, the door behind me slammed shut with violent force. The air grew heavy, pressing on my chest, and then the whispers began. At first, faint, then louder, overlapping voices all around me, though no one was there. I heard a child's laughter, sharp and cruel, a woman sobbing, a man shouting angrily. The whispers twisted into a cacophony until suddenly silence dropped over me again. I looked down. The pocket watch had stopped. 3:17. My pulse thundered in my ears. Whatever this town was, it wasn't empty. I stumbled out into the street, desperate for fresh air, but the atmosphere had changed. The town no longer looked frozen, looked alive in a different, darker way. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the ground, bending as if they had wills of their own. Scratches marked every wall, deep claw-like gouges that dragged across doors, windows, and brick like something had tried to rip its way out of Greywick. I wanted to run, but my feet carried me forward, up the hill toward the church at the edge of town. Its doors were cracked open, beckoning like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. Against every instinct, I pushed inside. The church smelled of melted wax and something metallic. The pews were empty, dust clinging to their edges, but melted candle stubs lined the altar, their wax hardened into pools on the stone floor. On the pulpit sat a leather-bound journal. I opened it with trembling hands. The words on the final page were still clear, written in hurried strokes. We gathered at 3:16. The bell rang once. By 3:17, everything stopped. If you find this, leave Greywick. Leave before the clock strikes again. My blood ran cold. The words pulsed in my head like a warning bell, but before I could react, the heavy doors behind me slammed shut. Then came the sound, a groaning creak that made my stomach drop. Above me, the church bell began to move, rusted iron grinding against itself. Once, twice, 3 times it rang, each toll vibrating through the floorboards and rattling my bones. My breath froze as I realized what was happening. The journal had warned me. 3:17. The moment was returning, and then I was no longer alone. The pews filled in an instant. People sat there, rows of them, pale as ash, their faces locked in silent screams. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, as though frozen in terror. They didn't move, they didn't breathe, not until one of them did. Slowly, with a sickening crack, a head turned toward me. The eyes locked onto mine. Its lips parted, and a rasping whisper escaped. "You shouldn't have come." Every figure turned then, in perfect unison, their hollow eyes watching me. I bolted. I ran with every ounce of strength I had, bursting through the church doors, sprinting down the empty streets, past the houses, past the frozen clocks, past the shadows that now stretched like arms reaching for me. My car was waiting where I had left it, the only proof that maybe I could still escape. I jumped inside, slammed the door, and floored the accelerator. The town shrank in my rearview mirror until it was nothing but a blur of gray swallowed by the trees. I didn't stop until I reached the next city, my body shaking for air. For a moment, I thought I was safe, but when I looked at the passenger seat, my heart stopped. Sitting there was the pocket watch, its hands ticking steadily, marking time. 3:16. I stared in horror as the second hand moved forward with a sharp click. 3:17. The car engine died instantly. The streetlights flickered out, plunging me into darkness. And in the silence that followed, I heard them, the whispers. They weren't behind me anymore. They were right there in the car, breathing on my neck.